So I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Chris.
and we're the founders of Hug Your Chaos. We are coaches, and we're also writers, healers, and we do a lot of work around empowerment.
Exactly. So, just as a little bit of a backstory, it's a really interesting path that brought us together to do what we're doing. And I guess some of you may have guessed I'm not from around here. I am in fact from Australia, and Lindsay is not from Australia, so it adds to the interesting journey that brought us together. So how does somebody that's born in New Jersey meet a guy from the Sunshine Coast of Australia to come together to create a coaching and healing agency? On Facebook, funnily enough, of all places.
The brilliance of social media.
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, social media can be used for a lot of good, and we're going to get to a little bit of what that's about. But right, interestingly enough, we did meet on Facebook, and once upon a time, that would have been something that I would have absolutely have closed the consideration to, because I would have been like, who are you? Not interested. I don't trust anybody. I'm angry. I don't want to be vulnerable. I'm very shut down. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk to you guys about today. We're going to start by kind of giving you guys a little bit of our backstory, letting you know a little bit about what we've come through and how we got to where we're at, and then offer you guys some tools that you can take away and start implementing in your daily lives so that you can start to gain empowerment over yourself.
So, who here knows what it feels like to be depressed? Pretty well.
Pretty common,
the whole room.
right? How about anxiety? Right? Like one of the most common things that we see in the world today.
Anyone suffer from addiction?
I did.
Kind of.
So, my personal backstory involves severe clinical depression. I was medicated for the better part of 20 years for it. My depression started when I was a child, and I had no idea what was happening to me. Because I came from a military family, I entered into the military. I was pretty good at talking my way into situations that I wanted to be in. So,
It's very good at that.
against what would be the common sense judgment, having this depression inside of me, I managed to get through the psychological screening and got into the military, was deployed to war zones, and that just exasperated the hell out of where I was. It created a whole lot of turmoil in me, which I then spent the next 20 years trying to make sense of. So, for myself, I'm now in a place where I say I'm naturally free from depression, and that's what we're going to talk about, is how I actually achieved that, in line with Lindsay's story as well, how she achieved what she achieved, with some real practical tools. Because it's easy enough to say you can get free of these things in your life, you can find your greatest empowerment in life. But how do you do it? And then when you do have the tools, how do you remember to use them? That's what we're going to cover here today.
Yeah, because a lot of what we teach goes against what we're actually taught and programmed with. And so there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen for us to really embrace our paths to empowerment, right? We resonate. So for me, I'm kind of the polar opposite. I really railed against everything where Chris ended up in the military and he sort of walked through that structured path. I was the rebel. I grew up in New Jersey. I have a Cuban father, an Italian mother, so there was a lot of yelling and nobody expressing themselves at the same time, right? You're either getting the silent treatment or you were getting yelled at. And emotional health definitely wasn't, one of the core elements of my family dynamic. And I identify as an empath. Is anybody familiar with being an empath? Identify as an empath? Yeah, so you guys know. It's really overwhelming to be in the world when you don't even understand half of what you're feeling isn't yours, right? So there I was in my family, feeling everybody's stuff, knowing what everybody's feeling, and making it all about me, taking it all personal. Everybody's anger, everybody's rage was my fault. And I internalized all of that big time. So naturally, by the time I got into high school, I found drugs and alcohol, and they were my answer because they shut this off. And they took away the pain that I was feeling in here, because I was in constant pain of just that inner monologue of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I can't do it, and all of that stuff fueled massive social anxiety as well. And because of who I was and what I learned growing up, I learned that if I showed emotions, I got punished. So I learned to not show emotions. So even my panic attacks, I learned to internalize. Painful. So there I would have to go to a new school, I would have to do a presentation at school, and I would be having, an utter panic attack inside. And so I developed this kind of alter ego, this outward persona of this person who just didn't give a shit about anything. And that really wasn't me. So there was a massive disconnect between my true nature of being highly sensitive and caring so much and feeling everybody's stuff, and this attitude and this person who acted like they just didn't care. And then to kind of coincide with that, I developed a lot of perfectionism, because I thought if I could just be perfect, I was finally going to get that approval I was looking for, because that's all we really want, right? Love, approval, connection, we all just want those things. And we develop behaviors very young that we think are going to get us those things, but what nobody stops and tells us is that those things got to come from in here first. And that's when we'll start then getting them from other people. But that, of course, the paradox is that that's when we stop needing them from other people, right? Because we found them in here, and that's when we can just enjoy them. So, like I said, I barely graduated high school. As smart as I went from being like an A student to almost flunking out of high school. Got really heavy into drugs, heroin, opiates, anything I could put in a needle and shoot in my arm, I would do. And I spent the beginning part of my 20s really caught up in that. And then I got out of that. I spent 18 months in a treatment facility where I came out thinking, drugs are the problem, I'm good. If I stay away from them, I'll be okay. And a couple of years later, I just started drinking and spent the rest of my 20s bouncing around, moving, pulling geographics, running, drinking, avoiding. But I also had a lot of really big successes. So it was like this roller coaster of getting my stuff together and then trashing my life, getting it together and trashing my life. Because deep down, I really didn't believe I was worth having a powerful life. I didn't really believe that I could handle having a powerful life, and I was still really, really driven by those cycles of anxiety and depression. And then when I was 26 years old, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And coming out of that, I was just angry when that happened. I was just really, like, I was already a drug addict, now I have cancer, really? I was like, can I catch a break? I was very, very, entrapped in victim. And so I still hadn't learned to express my emotions, so I was still bottling everything up inside. And what I didn't understand at the time was that cancer was the physical response to me bottling up all of that toxicity for all of those years and all of that stuff I had been carrying on for all of those years. So I came into my early 30s and I had burned my life to the ground yet again, found myself living in California, and I was starting to get really, really bad into the drugs again, and I was going to start committing crimes again, and I was risking going to jail, and I was really risking trashing my life. And I had a moment of like divine intervention, surrender, where I was sitting there. I agreed to go to a detox, and it finally hit me that I knew nothing. Like, I knew nothing about how to live life, right? If you guys are familiar with Game of Thrones, they were telling you know nothing, Jon Snow. Like, that's me, right? I had this moment of like, you know nothing. And I finally stopped trying to control and run, and I started really taking the suggestions of other people, and that's what started my own path to healing and empowerment. And a lot of what we'll talk about today as well has to do with the chakras, because I started working with the chakras when I came out of that cycle, and I started to really understand just how much the energetic patterns that we're taught and that we're given and that are passed down a lot of times, even ancestrally, through generations, through our cellular memory, affects what we're doing in our lives now. And we don't ever really stop to reflect on that. And when we do, it can start to give us a lot of really big insights into our behaviors and how we can change them.
Let me ask you guys a question. What does chaos mean to you?
Things being out of control.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Just out of order.
Out of order? That's good, because chaos and order kind of sit at two ends of the spectrum, so I like that. Anything else?
Anger.
Yeah, it can be.
Right, because anger can feel out of control. Is anybody comfortable with their anger? Or is everybody kind of like, nope, don't want to be angry, don't want to admit that I'm angry, don't really know what to do when I'm angry?
One of the things that we like to do here with Hug Your Chaos is we like to make it very clear that nobody's a spectator in life. Everybody is in the game. Whether you want to play or not, everybody's in the game. And one of the issues we have with our personal anxiety, our depression, as empaths, when we're feeling overwhelmed, it's because we're resisting the game. The game is still being played. Just because you're choosing not to engage with it doesn't mean that it's not being played. So because none of us are spectators, I want to get everybody involved. So everybody stand up for me for a second, please. Go and meet somebody that you did not enter this room with.
Give a handshake. Give a
Hi,
hug.
I'm Tasha. Nice to meet you. What brought you here today?
I found out about this online, and I'm interested in mindfulness and meditation. I'm big into yoga, so I thought I'd come check it out.
Oh, that's awesome.
How about you?
I saw it on Facebook and I'm trying to break into this kind of stuff. Nice meeting you, Sarah. Hi, I'm Nirvana.
I'm Zaza. Nice to meet you. What brought you here today? Oh, that's so sweet.
To like kind of just enjoy, see, and just kind of like learn something new.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. I found out about this online. So
Yeah.
I'm into mindfulness and yoga, and just wanted to come and check it out. It looks great, so I've been enjoying it so far.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Nice to meet you.
Awesome, beautiful work.
Now let me ask, who was that uncomfortable for? Anybody? Great.
So once upon a time, just side note, once upon a time, that would have been like, I probably would have tried to sneak out the back door and now I'm here. So you guys can see the massive changes that we can go through in our lives when we do this work and really make a commitment to ourselves to start participating.
Now my other question is, if I ask you to shout out the name of somebody you just met, who can do that?
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So that's part of being present as well, which is very powerful. If you want to take your own power, you've got to be present to do that. That happens in the moment. That can't happen in the past. It can't happen in the future. That has to happen right now. So when somebody's telling you something about themselves, showing up and listening to that intently, that's part of you taking your power by giving them the space to do that. So I just wanted to share that with you.
So coming back to the whole idea of, sort of resisting, right? Resisting life is happening and we're so full of anxiety. When you really think about what anxiety is, it's what? We're everywhere but the present moment. We're in the future. If we're anxiety, we're not now. If we're in anxiety, we're future tripping about something. And it's probably something that we can't control. Because do we actually have control over anything besides ourselves? We just like to tell ourselves we do, right? Like, I'm gonna sit over here and worry about this because maybe if I worry about it some more, I'll change the outcome.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Who here has panic attacks?
I had one this morning.
Do you want to be free of it? All right, let's get interactive. Do you want to come up?
Sure.
All right, grab a chair.
Your face.
This is going to work for anybody, by the way. And this is something that I discovered within myself when I was 16 because I was suffering from panic attacks. I had no idea what was happening to me. I tried to talk to my father about it, who told me to keep my mouth shut or I would end up in a mental home. And that scared the shit out of me. So I had to find out what this thing was that was happening to me.
And this is something a lot of the people we end up working with intensively in our coaching tend to have struggle with anxiety. So this is something that Chris works with them on and has a profound effect.
What's your name?
Larissa.
Larissa. Chris. Larissa, when you start to feel yourself having a panic attack, there's a telltale. You feel a shift in your physiology. You feel a shift in your body, right? You know what that feeling feels like?
Yeah.
Make yourself panic right now. Okay, you feeling that shift? Can you bring it on? Can you bring on a full-scale panic attack for yourself right now? Try and force it. Meet it head on. This is what life is. Hugging chaos. There's the panic monster. Run up and jump into his arms. Is he showing up at your command?
Yeah.
All right. Keep going. Push into it. While she's working on that, one of the things I can tell you about panic is a coward. Panic does not want to be known. It wants to creep up from behind and it wants to startle you without you knowing anything about it.
It wants to lurk without you seeing its face.
There's a story that the difference between cow and buffalo when a storm comes, is anyone familiar with that? So when a storm comes, what cow will do is they'll turn and they'll run from the storm. And the storm's still going to overwhelm them. They can't run faster than a storm. The buffalo will turn and face the storm and they'll run into the storm. And the difference is they recognize that if they run into the storm, they're going to get through it faster. So how are you feeling right now, Larissa?
I feel a little released because like with my panic attacks, I just hold it in there more like silent panic attacks because I conditioned myself to not show my emotions because I would get punished for it. So it's more like usually they're like silent panic attacks. Like I just feel like my soul wanting to get out of my body, and it feels like forever that I'm in that state of panic and despair.
All right, so
fear.
I want you to close your eyes and I want you to one more time try to bring on a panic attack. Feel that shift in the body. It's kind of like that blood rush. Feel it starting to overwhelm you a little bit. You're completely safe right now. But I want you to try and feel that panic attack full force. Now what I want you to do when you're at that point where you feel like it's really starting to get hold within you, come back to your breath. Don't try and deepen the breath, just observe it. Place your full focus at the entry of your nostrils right now and feel as the air passes into your body. Feel as the air passes back out. I want you to start to notice the temperature difference. The air is cooler as it comes in, and as it goes back out, it's a little bit warmer. Visibly slowing down. You're starting to feel that? There's no sense of the panic or anxiety because you're controlling it right now. Anxiety is the absence of control of the breath. When you're in a panic attack, you are not consciously breathing. If you've got a notepad, write that down. That's powerful to remember. Keep breathing. Now, 5 things off the top of your head. What are you grateful for in this moment? What's number 1? What are you so grateful for right now?
I am grateful for I have abusive parents that I cut. I don't no longer speak with.
Beautiful. You took your power. That's something to be grateful for. What else? That's 1.
I've been staying at the house of my friend's parents, and they've been amazing to me. So I'm very grateful I have them in my life. I'm very grateful I have a very, very supportive, loving boyfriend. I have a supportive brother, and I was raised in a religious cult, and I get emotional just I'm grateful that I'm being able to change my beliefs even though it's really hard.
Beautiful. Okay. So what I want you to recognize right now in this moment is there was a single word that you used at the start of everything that you're grateful for. What was that word?
I don't remember honestly. Yeah.
Are you grateful for yourself?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So what I want you to do is next time you start to have the feeling of anxiety build up inside yourself, face it square in the face, race towards it, make yourself panic, and you're going to start to realize that you can't force yourself to panic. As it starts to come on, you come back to the breath, you speak your gratitude. How does that feel?
It feels good. It feels like I'm in control, but it's still hard because I feel like I'm in a constant state of panic. The things in my life have been really chaotic and uncertain, so I always feel like I'm in a state of panic. I can never relax. Plus, I have been diagnosed with PTSD recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know.
All right, so stand up and give me a hug.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. This leads me to a very powerful point that I want everybody to take note of. And if you have a notepad, write this down. There is a single thing in the world that you have control over. What is it? Bingo. Write that down. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the traffic. You cannot control who hates you. You cannot control who doesn't hate you. You can control where you stand in relation to all of that. That is your power. Why then are you so willing to give your power away by getting frustrated with the traffic or with the weather or with people that don't agree with your position in whatever it is that you're talking about? Someone doesn't agree with you on whether you like or dislike Trump, you get angry at them, you unfriend them on Facebook. That's outside of your control. What's inside your control is what's happening in you. Just like this example, you are feeling overwhelmed and the anxiety, the panic, because there's so many things in the world that are outside of your control, correct?
Yeah.
So what can you control?
How my life is going. I mean, it's hard because I always feel like my life is out of control, but the breath, something I can control.
So coming back to the whole thing about control and anxiety and panic, what do you guys think the opposite of anxiety or panic is?
Peace.
Sort of?
Acceptance.
Sort of?
Love.
Getting closer? What trust? Being present, right? Because when we're in panic and when we're anxious, like we're worried about everything that's outside of our control, and we're dumping all of our energy into all of these things. How many of you believe in some universal intelligence, God, source, gods, goddesses, whatever, some higher beings that are having something to do with our path here on earth, right? So many of us go through life and we believe, but at the very moment we're like, oh, but I don't trust you. I need to be in control, right? We can look at nature and be like, wow, something really powerful created this ocean or this mountain or this flower or this other person that I love so much. But the moment we turn our focus on ourselves, we're full of doubt and fear and, oh, you must have messed up. You must have made a mistake. And I just must not be, worthy, and I must not be capable. And all of that is learned behaviors. It's learned filters. And it's untrue, right?
Exactly. So let's do another exercise. Who here came today with something that they're feeling triggered by? Something that they're bothered by? Something that's going on in life that's not working the way you want it to?
Or having a...
Would you like to try?
pick on you the whole time, so. Hi.
What's your name?
Taji? Hi.
Beautiful to meet you. So there's a process that we use, and the process is a double-edged sword in that you can use it when you're triggered, but you can also use it when you're trying to discover why you are finding something important in life. We're going to run through that now. So what's got you triggered at the moment in life?
I'm not happy with my job.
Okay.
So I was doing a job that I liked, but it was draining. And so then I learned to like some other things. And maybe the last job I was in for 2 years, it's not like I loved it, but I got comfortable and good at it. And then it went away. And so now I'm in a temp job. And I just feel like unanchored and like, well, what kind of nurse am I going to be? Where am I going to go? It's making me crazy.
All right. So essentially your workplace is affecting you. You're triggered by it.
Yes.
Why are you triggered by it?
Yeah, what about it is bothering you?
I'm not adept at it yet, so it's a different kind of nursing, and I have to learn all these things, and it's administrative. So not to disregard that kind of nursing, but at my core, I like taking care of people, so then it also feels ridiculous. So to me it's a ridiculous thing, and I'm not good at it, and I'm under a lot of pressure to do it in a ridiculous volume.
Okay. So the position itself doesn't make so much sense, and it's got you triggered because you're not very good at it just yet.
Yeah.
Why does it bother you that you're not very good at this job?
Because I have an issue with failure.
Okay. Now we're starting to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you're triggered by this job ultimately because you're not very good at it. And I think that the whole concept that the job is stupid or doesn't make sense might just be because you're not very good at it. Right? There's probably a vital place for what you're doing.
Yes, and it's not as worthy to me though. I wouldn't put a premium on it. you know, people's referrals and their prior authorizations for insurance are important. But,
Absolutely.
Especially here.
yeah, but, you know.
Okay, so ultimately you're triggered by it because you're not very good at it,
Mhm.
and that's triggering you because you have an issue with failure.
Yes.
What is it about failure that triggers you?
Oh, I don't,
What happens if you fail?
Yeah.
everybody's gonna know, like, you're not good enough, or,
Oh,
yeah, or you're not that smart, or,
what happens if you're not good enough?
What happens if everybody knows you're not that good, you're not good enough, or you're not that smart?
they're gonna point it out.
And if
then
they
what
point it
happens?
out, what happens?
Why does it trigger you if it's pointed out that you're not good enough?
It's humiliating.
Okay.
And what happens then? How do you feel when you're humiliated?
Like this big.
Okay. And then what's underneath that?
A whole bunch of self-esteem issues.
Aha.
That goes way back.
Word.
Now,
Yeah.
the whole concept of being triggered by work leads all the way down towards self-esteem issues, probably
Self-worth.
as a child.
Mhm.
And so this is what we call 7-layer system. The 7 layers is asking, why does this trigger me? You've just gone in a layer. Okay, it triggers me because I'm not very good at it. So why does it trigger you that you're not very good at something? Well, it triggers me because then I'm going to be shown that I'm not, you know, and the story goes deeper and deeper each time. Eventually you're getting to the crux of an issue. What happened when you were a child that stole your self-esteem? You don't have to share it in front of the crowd. We're not Tony Robbins here.
Yeah.
But the reality is there was something, and I dare say you're aware of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I've done a lot of work on it.
But if it's still presenting in this,
Yeah, it's not resolved.
then it hasn't resolved yet.
Yeah.
And this leads to the understanding that, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time. This leads to the understanding that so many of the tools that are available on the market for you, tools like candles and crystals and doing yoga, and these are beautiful things that you can do, that you can incorporate, but a tool is not going to repair a motor by itself. Owning the tool is not going to repair the motor. You are the mechanic. The tool is not the mechanic.
The tool is not going to do the work for you, right? You can have a whole toolbox at your feet. If you put a toolbox on my feet and a motor, I'd be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to use, right? So we do the same thing, right? I love crystals. I love oils, right? I love sound, and I love things that I can burn and clear the air, but they're only going to work for us on the top layer, right? They'll help in the moment, almost like a Band-Aid will help a wound heal, right? They'll help in the moment. You can grab a crystal, right? Crystals for anxiety are great. You hold a garnet or you hold some obsidian to ground you when you're feeling really anxious. Those can be wonderful tools. But if we don't get to the root of it and look at what's really going on with the issues that are deeper, then we're constantly going to have to be reaching for those tools, right? So if we work from both ends, if we can get really deep in there and start looking at what's really going on, because just to use you as an example once again, I mean, how many things might you have avoided in your life because you had the prejudgment to be like, well, I don't need to do that because there's that underlying fear that I'm not good enough, I'm going to show everybody that I'm not worthy. If I'm not worthy, they're going to judge me, they're going to kick me out, I'm going to be all alone, I'm going to end up over there alone, and if I'm alone, I might die, right? Because that's what it feels like. Because we're still operating from a very primitive mindset that if we get kicked out of the community, we're going to be cold with no fire, with no saber-toothed cat to eat for dinner, and no furs to keep us warm, and we're going to be alone, and we're going to die. And we don't consciously realize that that's what's running the show, but it is. And then we also get to layer in all of our dysfunction and abandonment issues and emotional issues that we get handed down growing up in the world today, right? Because all too often we're not taught. I mean, it's probably a very common thing. How many people were encouraged to feel and express their emotions growing up? How many people were punished for it, right? Like, you don't really get taught to express that stuff. And it's very much linked to, because what is that anxiety, right? Let's explore that anxiety for a second that so many of you raised your hands for at the beginning. Underneath that anxiety of all of these things that you know, we can't control, especially like social anxiety, it's like this fear of this really deep-rooted fear of being seen, of being found out, right? Oh my God, you might see me for who I really am, and if you see me for who I really am, you're not going to like me and you're going to judge me because I think I'm this horrible person. But now when we sit there as adults and we're like, why do I think I'm this horrible person? Have you guys ever asked yourself why you think you're this horrible person? We don't, right? So somebody once asked me at the beginning of my journey, she said to me, why do you believe what you believe? And I thought for a second and I said, well, it's what I was taught. And she was like, well, who says it's true? And I sat there for a minute and I was like, oh, like totally had this moment of like, wow. And that's what started me on this journey of digging, within me. Who says I'm not good enough? Who's ever actually said that? Well, nobody ever actually told me that, but I can link it to the way my dad treated me, and he was, verbally abusive, physically abusive sometimes. We didn't talk about emotions, and I internalized all that, or I got, there's a lot of, it was very authoritarian and very critical. So we can take that and if we're not allowed to make mistakes as children, right? One of the biggest things I see in the world today is frustration at children for being children. They have to move. They have to make noises. They're not meant to be able to sit still for hours at end, right? And when we get frustrated at them for that, we're telling them there's something wrong with you for being a human child. And that then gets internalized into this whole thing that's attached to low self-worth and shame, anxiety, depression, and then we carry it all inside of us. And I mean, if we look at ourselves as physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic beings, there's all these layers to us, right? How long do you think we can hold those energy blocks or those emotional blocks or those mental blocks within us before they start showing up physically? Chronic pain, chronic disease, illness, right?
The 7 layers that we just used to find out why you're triggered by your job, we can use the same thing. Is anyone here really passionate about creating something, trying to create a business, trying to start a new project, a new thing, something you're really passionate about? One of the reasons that we don't succeed is because we don't connect deeply enough with why we want to do it. We get caught up in the tyranny of how to do it without understanding why we want to do it. So the 7 layer system works for why we want to achieve as well. It's not just why we're triggered. So these 2 questions, why does this trigger me? And why do I want to achieve this? You could take both of those, or why is this important to me would be a better way to say that second one. You could take both of those and you could use that and ask yourself 7 layers. Why is this important to me? Because of this. Why is that important to me? You will get to the crux of it. Eventually you will find your why, and you'll probably find tears going down your eyes at that moment. It's that powerful. When you find yourself 7 layers deep, you are going to know the answer to that question. And then the how will reveal itself to you. Never get caught up in the tyranny of how to achieve something. If you want to achieve something, know why you want to achieve it on a deep level. And then how will make itself known.
So coming back to the 3 tools we used in the anxiety exercise, the breath and the gratitude and that self-talk. How many of you are aware of your self-talk, your inner monologues, your inner narratives? Do you hear how you talk to yourselves? Would you talk to somebody else the way you speak to yourself?
No, be friends with the voice in the head.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
So what's one of the most common things you tell yourself?
You're an idiot.
And whose voice is that usually in? Where can you trace that back to?
I don't know.
I hear my mother's voice.
Yeah. Yeah, for me it's my dad, right?
Oh, maybe my dad, yeah.
Yeah. And what we don't realize when we're children and they're speaking to us that way, they're actually talking to themselves, right? Because what we express outwardly is the biggest mirror for what's going on in here, right? So I've really, where I used to be really, like, try to stay away from people that were, aggressive or angry, they were, the reason those people stood out to me is because my core feeling for 33 years was anger and rage. Only I was disconnected from it. It was in there, but I put a nice big cinder block in my throat chakra so I didn't have to feel any of that. I just kept it down in there. So when I saw it in other people, I was like, oh, You need to stay away from me, right? Because we avoid those things that people are showing us, and oftentimes the things that stand out most to us are the things that we really don't want to, connect to within ourselves. And a lot of this has to do with because the way society is right now, especially with social media. Everything is a highlight reel, right? Everybody's life is great, everybody's life is perfect, their relationship's always perfect, nobody ever gets in a fight, nobody has a bad hair day, nobody whatever. And don't get me wrong, I'm not for just putting it all out there at all the time to anybody, but it's like we're not portraying our humanness, right? And to be human is to be flawed, right? So the whole purpose of Hug Your Chaos and what we do is to reconnect to the idea that it's okay for us to have flaws and it's okay for us to have imperfections, and more than anything, it's okay for us to talk about them and admit to them and be able to be like, oh my God, you have anxiety? Me too. Oh, you've gone through depression? Me too, right? Because and this is what we're seeing playing out on a large scale, right? With gender battles and sexism and sexual assault and all of these things that are playing out on the grand spectrum, is that for too long, nobody's been allowed to express anything. Now it all wants to come out, and it's it's a good thing that it's all coming out, right? Because we gotta rip open the wound and look at the infection if we're ever gonna heal from it. But unfortunately, a lot of the way society wants to go is they want to be able to just be like, oh, let's just jump over that wound and pretend like it, didn't even happen, and we'll just move on from it. Can't we just put it all behind us? No, right? We have to all be able to express our experiences, and if we need to feel anger, if we need to feel pain, if we need to feel frustration, if we need to, whatever it is that we need to feel, we need to be able to feel it, and we need to learn how to express it without directing it at everybody, right? That's emotional maturity. That's where we start getting into emotional mastery.
Let's hit the brakes. I feel like we're going too fast. Who wants to know what the ultimate crux of taking your power is in life? That's why you're here, right?
Right? Yeah.
You want to know what it's all about. How do you take your power in life? Straight up. There's three things, the three pillars of empowerment, three pillars of happiness, three pillars of everything that you want for yourself. The first pillar is your breath. You think up until this point that it's something you do 25,000 times a day just to keep you alive. You're wrong. It is a tool, and it's a very powerful tool that is designed to anchor you. It anchors you into the moment. It creates space. It grounds you.
Gets you out of here and into here.
It is a shift in your physiology. It takes you from the thoughts that are telling you you're not good enough, or that this asshole just cut you off, or that the dog's shitting on your lawn, or whatever's going on right now. It takes you from that space and it brings you back to yourself. That's the power of your breath. You have been breathing every single day, 25,000 times a day, for however old you are, and it's going to keep going until the day you die. It started the day that you got here. This is a powerful tool, and it's a powerful gift. The breath will create space for you. So next time you find yourself in a situation where somebody is in your face, really triggered by something, and it can be a situation, it can be a person, it can be anything. It's right here, it's right up close and personal, and you're feeling triggered. You've got the blood rush, you're ready to start screaming, you're ready to start running, you're ready to start swinging, whatever's coming up for you. Take a breath. Come back to the breath.
Do you guys know that when you're breathing shallowly, you're keeping yourself in a fight or flight response? So when we're all walking around and we're shallow breathing, shoulders are jacked up, muscles are tense, right? Keeping us in that chronic state of tension, that chronic state of panic. We're in fight or flight mode. And when we're in fight or flight mode, we're operating from the front of the brain. And that part of the brain doesn't have the capacity to assess and look and say, is there actually a threat? All it is survival, right? You've dropped down into that root chakra and you're in full survival mode, which means you can't see what's actually happening. You're just perceiving, where's the threat, where's the threat, where's the threat? So can you imagine when you're going through days on end in that fight or flight space, what that's doing to your body, what that's doing to your emotions, what that's doing to your mind, right? It's exhausting. So when we take those deep mindful breaths, it drops us into that rest or digest nervous system where we then switch to a different part of our brains, and that's when we're able to actually assess, nobody's jumping out of the bushes to get me. We're good. I'm perceiving things that aren't really happening, and that's where my panic is coming from. So it changes where we're operating from in the brain, physiologically.
Does anyone here sail? Anyone like sailing? No one? I love sailing. I spent some time sailing with Lindsay in the South Pacific, a 34-foot masthead sloop. Sailing's amazing. I definitely recommend trying it. You've got a beautiful spot right here as well. You don't learn to sail in rough seas, right? That's the recipe for disaster. When you're learning how to drop an anchor off a vessel, you don't learn to bed an anchor in rough seas. You learn how to do it when the weather is calm. It's the same thing with breathing. Don't try and practice this technique when someone is in your face. You're not going to remember to use it, and if you do, you're probably going to do it badly. What you want to do is practice this as a technique when there is nothing invested, when there is nothing to gain from it. Do it when you first wake up, the second you open your eyes. So, does anyone have a morning routine they go through every single day?
Who grabs their phone when they first wake up?
Yeah. Whose morning routine is what's everyone else doing on Facebook?
So when we do that, we're immediately giving ourselves to everybody else before we've even connected with ourselves.
Oh, look, so-and-so is at the gym right now with perfect makeup on. What a bitch.
And oh my God, I'm such a loser, I'm still in bed. Like, why, right?
If that's your morning routine, as of tomorrow morning, it is no longer your morning routine. This is now your morning routine. From the second you open your eyes, put a big cheesy Cheshire cat grin on your face. Seriously, this is the thing that helped me overcome clinical depression naturally. The second you wake up, smile for all you're worth, even when you don't feel like it. What's going to happen in that moment is something will shift in your brain. You are now, it's not about the smile, it's about you claiming, I own this day. That's what that does. You're in charge now. The depression's not in charge, you are. The traffic, that's not in charge. The rain, that's not in charge, you are. That's what smiling does when you first wake up. Then you start observing the breath. Don't change it, don't deepen it, don't try any pranayama, don't try any anapana, don't try any crazy breath hold techniques. Just observe it. Whatever it shows up as, that is perfect in that moment. And when you can observe the breath like that in that moment, you are practicing the art of observation. You are teaching yourself to observe beyond reaction. So when somebody does get in your face, I can observe this, I don't have to react. All of a sudden, you can now drop an anchor in on a rough sea because you've practiced it when you first wake up, when the sea is calm. Make sense? Morning routine. What are you going to do when you first open your eyes tomorrow morning? Yeah. What's the next thing you're going to do?
Breathe.
Okay.
Yeah, give yourself a couple minutes of just observing that breath. Of course your mind is going to be like, but don't we need to go do this and don't we need to go do that? Just be like, yes, thank you for thinking in a minute. Thank you for doing your job. We're just going to observe right now and come back to your breath and just observe it. And then go to gratitude like we did with you, right?
Before we do gratitude, I just very quickly want to say, don't hate on your thoughts.
Yep.
Your brain is doing what your brain was designed to do. When you hate on it, you're hating on you for doing what this tool is designed to do.
That's right.
If you're trying to meditate, if you're trying to observe the breath, and it keeps darting over here and over there and over there, instead of calling your idiotic brain back with anger, be grateful. Brain, thank you. You think. There's many people that can't do this. I'm really grateful that I have the ability to think. And then bring it back. But right now we're doing this instead.
Yeah. Just think of it like it's very undisciplined. It's a very undisciplined child or a rescue dog or something that you're going to not judge and be patient with. Be that same amount of patient with yourself as you would with that child you're helping or that rescue animal that you're helping. Your mind's just undisciplined and you have to just teach it to come back, and that's how you do it.
Gently.
By coming to that observation, right? Checking in with that gratitude, because gratitude grounds us in the moment. Gratitude is basically like love in action. So when you can connect with the things that you're grateful for, it is one of the most high vibrational states there is of existence. So speak out loud at least 5 things you're grateful for and make sure that you are on that list. Because without you, nothing else exists.
You
Right?
speak the gratitude out loud after you've observed the breath for 5 or 10 minutes, and when you speak it out loud, you're hearing it in your own ears, and all of a sudden it's becoming real to you. It's no longer just a random thought, because we don't believe our own thoughts, right? The thoughts that my partner's cheating on me, that my boss is going to make me work Saturday and Sunday, that this is happening or that that's happening, we don't necessarily believe those. Why are we going to believe our gratitude thoughts? So speak them out loud, and now you're hearing that in your own ears, and it becomes real, it becomes true. So take that time after you've observed the breath to speak the gratitude out loud. And so
Even if you have to whisper it to yourself.
if the breath is really good at creating space, the gratitude is good at holding space. So many times we get a call in the middle of the night from, God bless them, our clients, saying, I'm really struggling with something right now. And we will answer with, where's your breath? I've been focusing on my breath constantly. It's not working. You know, it's there. Where's your gratitude? Oh, I forgot about that bit. Okay, go and practice gratitude and give us a call in the morning and let's see where you're at.
The breath opens the space, the gratitude fills the space. Because think about it, you can't be in fear and gratitude at the same time. You can't be in anger and gratitude at the same time. You can't be in panic and gratitude at the same time. Judgment and gratitude. You can't. Those lower dense, don't get me wrong, those emotions have a place, they're all part of being human, but you can't hold that heavy density in the space of high vibrational gratitude. So it helps to then transmute it, right? And then you can go back later after you've removed yourself and you can revisit the emotions with a more clear mind instead of from a place of reaction. Because we don't want to use the gratitude to just avoid everything, but we want to use it to create space for a little while so we can step away and respond instead of react, right?
That's the goal, is to get from reaction to response. So gratitude is the thing that will change the landscape. It will actually change the situation itself. The breath will change you, gratitude will change what's happening outside of you. And let me give you an example, what I mean by that. We used to live in Southern California. Has anyone heard of the I-405 motorway?
That's the one that anytime you see a movie in LA when they're stuck in gridlock, that's the 405.
The South Bay
Parking
Bend,
lot.
it's literally
6 lanes of nobody moving.
constantly, even at 3 in the morning.
I mean, and you guys live up here, so we know you know about traffic.
So when we're commuting to our jobs in LA and we're stuck in this traffic on the I-405 every morning, what we came to realize very quickly was I could be hating on the situation I'm in right now and giving my power away to this massive line of traffic, in which case I'm going to get to work, I'm going to snap at somebody, I'm going to have a bad day, and I may end up jeopardizing my job. But then, use the breath, creates a little bit of space. You come back to yourself. The next thing that you do is you speak your gratitude. So all of a sudden, you're now not stuck in traffic. Now you're grateful for the fact that you're not stuck at a bus stop with 10 other people waiting to get on an overdue bus running late. You're grateful for the fact that you have your own vehicle, you're listening to the music or the podcast that you want to listen to. All of a sudden, that traffic jam's not so bad.
So there's always 2 perspectives on everything. And we can choose that perspective that we're so programmed to, that reaction perspective, which is usually, woe is me, or you're picking on me, or I'm taking it personally, or it's out to get me, whatever, right? Or the other one, that there's something, there's a lesson, there's something to be grateful for, there's always some blessing in the moment, right?
So this is pretty well a wrap on what we wanted to cover today. It's a brief insight into your power and how to take that. Start by doing it in the morning when there's nothing at stake. Start by connecting to your breath. Start by speaking your gratitude out loud for 5 things that you're grateful for. Start by putting yourself on that gratitude list and managing your self-talk. When you become aware of it, instead of beating yourself up for talking to yourself like you're an asshole, be gentle with yourself. Oh, I've just caught myself doing this again. Okay, it's a bad habit, it's an old habit. I'm grateful that I found it because now I have another chance to do it better.
And then insert something that is more empowering. And of course at first it's going to be like, well, I don't believe that. Tell yourself anyway. It's like you're forging a new path, right? So the positive self-talk is like, you've got this path that's just so well worn, and that's the negative self-talk. Now over here, there's like a little clearing in the woods. You gotta go in there and you gotta hack a new path. right? So look at it like that. You just have to work at it. And if you're willing to do it a little bit each day, it can make massive changes in your life.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions for us?
What if you have panic but you don't know why?
You don't necessarily need to know why. Just work with that shift in your body as you start to feel the panic coming on. Doesn't matter why, it doesn't matter what's causing it.
No?
That's irrelevant. You can dig into that stuff, but you don't need to know the trigger or the cause of it. As long as you can manage it now, that's all that's important.
And by using the breath to get into the moment instead of staying up here, because the panic is created up here. And it's usually because there's something you think is a threat. So by dropping down into here, you're able to look around and be like, okay, whatever I'm subconsciously creating as a threat isn't actually here.
Yeah, but that feeling in the body is not a good feeling.
No, right.
To go into it is not.
Well, that's a lot of what occurs is because we're so averse to it that we're like, I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel like that. That was me when I had panic attacks. I was more panicked about the panic attack than the actual, and then so we fuel it with that. And when you then just turn around and be like, you know what? Like, face it. All of a sudden it scurries off because it doesn't want to be confronted.
And so I said earlier when we did this exercise that I overcame panic attacks at 16 by myself because I didn't know what was happening to me. I've always been an inquisitive person. So the way that I did it was one day when I was feeling good, I sat down and I tried to force these feelings over myself. And the thing that I discovered was I couldn't bring them on if I was not afraid of them. So your fear of panic is what keeps you a hostage to your panic.
Right.
An anxiety attack is literally just losing control of your breathing. That is all it is.
But that fear of not being in control is so overwhelming. But it's funny because we don't have control anyway, so it's all an illusion.
It just sounds so simple, you know?
It is. It's not easy, but it is simple.
Yeah.
So it's just
Don't-
about learning a
don't
new.
complicate it.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna definitely.
And as you read the book, I think that's aha
Yeah,
moments.
it's all in the book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the exercises, it breaks it down how to overcome your anxiety attacks.
And I have to tell everybody, I did buy the book, and the book is really well written.
So yes, for anybody who wants to come and see us, we're at table 5, right in the lobby there. We've got our books there. We're doing some sound healings and clearing, chakra readings. If anybody wants to chat about anything, feel free to come by if you have any questions or anything you want to talk about outside of here. Come and see us.
There is one more point I want to leave you guys with, and it's probably the most powerful point of this whole presentation. It starts with C and it ends in istancy, consistency. If you practice this tomorrow morning and then never again, you're not going to take your power. If you truly want self-mastery, you have to be consistent.
That's right.
Even when you don't want to show up constantly. The mornings when you don't feel like doing it, do it.
That's especially when you need to do it, right?
When you're struggling and you don't want to go back to pick up the tools, that's the time you have to pick up the tools. Because you love yourself and you want to create a powerful version of you.
And you're worth having a beautiful, awesome, amazing life on your terms.
Everything that we've achieved in our lives, where we've come from to where we are now, is not unique and it's not special. It's able to be done by every single person on this planet. Everyone in this room, you all have the ability to get to that same space.
To do anything
Beyond
you
that
want.
space.
Yeah, yep.
We've got to the space that we could imagine for ourselves.
The whole anything is possible isn't just fluff. We've come to realize it's very possible and it's very possible for anybody.
Exactly. Any other questions for us? Thank you very much
Thank you all for
joining
being here.
us today.
Thank you.